Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Nancy Drew Game Ranking Series, where we are ranking every single Nancy Drew game on 6 key aspects, being the story and premise of each game, the suspects, the puzzles, the music, the atmosphere, and the ending of each game. I'm your host, Jameson.
And I'm Julian. What's going on, everyone?
And today we are reviewing Nancy Drew, The White Wolf of Icicle Creek.
The White Wolf of Icicle Creek is the 16th installment in the Her Interactive Nancy Drew game series. It takes place up in Alberta, Canada, and I personally think it excels in the setting. It's a really beautiful game to play, but the story is what really catches my attention because it's one of the few Nancy Drew games, when you actually think about it, that starts off the premise with an actual mystery. Nancy's being called in, actually as a reference by the Raleighs, by Chantal Mawikwe.
Yeah, it's a pretty clever callback that Ed and Bet Raleigh, who owned Shadow Ranch in Game 10, gave advice to their friend up north, Chantal Mawikwe, who owns Icicle Creek Lodge, which is kind of like a vacation place for skiers and just people looking to get away. And on that note, she has been experiencing a series of sabotage and vandalism and all sorts of uncanny accidents that are starting to make her think that it's a risky investment to keep the lodge open. This ranges anywhere from food poisoning, taking out half of her guests at a time, to slicked over stairs on the fire escape, having a customer break their legs or something. And recently, it has gotten out of hand with bombings on the property, and that is the straw that broke the camel's back to have her call in Nancy Drew.
So Nancy's being called in, and I love the reference back to the Raleighs. That was just a cute little touch back to Shadow Ranch, in my opinion. But the opening cutscene is with the ranch hand, Ollie Randall, and it was always unclear to me whether Ollie is supposed to be a suspect or not. The cutscene is pretty much just him talking, just giving a little brief backstory about what's been going on. It's getting to know his character a little bit, and then you hear a wolf howl out in the distance.
He brings up that there's been mention of a wolf prowling around the property, and this is kind of unnerving because in Canada, wolves are considered pests. The hunting season for wolves is all year round. You can shoot on sight with no legal ramifications, and there has been a wolf that's been getting close up to the patrons of the lodge and slinking around the surrounding property, and it's just a disaster waiting to happen, is what Ollie and Chantal think. It's been freaking guests out, and Ollie has been going after the wolf with his rifle and setting traps for it, and some people are starting to think that the wolf could be like a bad omen that's been causing all these accidents to happen.
And then all of a sudden, we just get a huge explosion out in the background. We actually see it. It looks like a nuclear, it looks like a huge explosion out in the distance.
Yeah, almost like a mushroom cloud. That's when the bunkhouse explodes right outside the lodge, and so Nancy then cuts to inside where she's on the phone with Chantal, and Chantal's like, was anyone in the bunkhouse when it exploded? Did we just have people die on our property? Ollie just starts answering the questions for her. Chantal's kind of panicking. She says that's where her maid and her cook used to live, Elsa and Becky, and she's glad that they quit, otherwise they could have been just killed right then and there. This is all nighttime when the game starts, by the way. And so Nancy devises the plan, which this is where the game gets dragged down. Nancy says, maybe if you let me be your new maid, then I would have permission to snoop through everyone's stuff when I'm cleaning their room and figure out who's guilty and who might be behind this. And that alone is I can forgive that. That's a decent idea, and that gives justification as to why Nancy has to do maid service and make people's beds and collect their laundry every day of the game.
Yeah.
What's unforgivable is when Chantal snakes her into going, yeah, how about you be my cook too? So then Nancy has to cook for everyone 3 meals a day, otherwise Chantal calls her on the phone and chews her out.
Mind you, this is all without pay.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. Nancy has so many jobs. I mean, payment has never been like a thing in any Nancy Drew case prior.
Forget Nancy's payment. What's in it for the player? I hate cooking salmon 3 times a day.
Yeah, there were some abominable tasks that you have to do just simply helping out, like non-pertaining to the mystery. It's a nuisance.
It's like having to do the burger puzzle from Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, but like 6 times a meal because there's 6 people at the lodge for the first half of the game, and then multiply that by 3. You're doing that puzzle 18 times a day. Until the second half, when Lou Talbot and Guadalupe have left, and Ollie says, how about I go ahead and take care of the cooking then, because it's only 4 people, which was some nice relief that should have come earlier.
And that shows that Her Interactive is self-aware that the player is obviously just sick and tired of this tedious puzzle. But
yeah, because if you don't know what you're doing, and you're just kind of like sleeping through the days, every time you wake up, you're screwing yourself into 15 more minutes of cooking omelets.
Now, I know we touched on the puzzles a little bit there with the cooking, but I think we wrapped up the premise pretty well. The phone call's pretty cool, and then we get a nice mention to a previous suspect, the one and only Tino Balducci.
Tino! Yeah.
So, but it's also a slap in the face, in my opinion, because Chantal mentions she is paying Tino Balducci to be doing detective work over the phone. He's not even here. Nancy, on the other hand, I mentioned it earlier, nothing for being the maid, cooking, carrying the mystery on her back. It's just
more service, Jesus.
It's just so crooked, but I had to get that out there. Tino, I'm happy they brought him back as a phone contact. He's one of those characters that I really would not mind coming back. And
yeah,
he had a good place in this game, I'll give it to him.
Tino is like the one character next to Hotchkiss who I think that they could continuously bring back in games as phone consultants, because he's just a good time. But otherwise, wrapping up the premise, the lodge was built by an old trapper who built it in like the 1800s or something, named Trapper Dan. And you find out more about him and a man that lived out in the woods with the wolf that is in the game, who he named Isis and trained thoroughly. His name was Julius McQuaid. And I think it's best that we just wait until we get to those things as we go through the other categories. So just be warned that they will be brought up and mentioned thoroughly.
So, in conclusion, the premise starts off with a bang, literally.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the suspects now, in which this game's kind of an outlier from the rest, being that I think there's 5 suspects, right?
All right,
if you count Ollie, sure.
So, if you count it by characters, you could go as far as to say there are 6 characters in this game, counting Freddy, Ollie's daughter. But if you just want to go off of the people that, like, the game is saying, yes, this could be a suspect, then I'd say it's 4, maybe 5 if you want to account for the victor factor of the guy who's supposed to be on your side being the culprit.
So, okay, who you want to start off with?
I guess we should cover up anything we missed about Ollie. So, Ollie's the ranch hand. The lodge hand, pardon me.
He's called the handyman.
He's the handyman of the ranch. He's in the basement.
The handyman of the ranch?
Handyman of the lodge! Ollie is the handyman of the lodge, and his whole deal is just slinking around in the basement, tinkering around with his rifle and bear traps and stuff. This game was honestly really mature in a lot of the themes that it had, just Ollie straight up trying to murk this wolf.
I was just gonna get to that. Ollie mentions countless times that he's a renowned hunter and that he's encountered wolves dozens of times, but this one has given him crazy trouble. He does a really cool dialogue that I like, where he talks about his encounter lately with the wolf, and it was just incredibly passive, staring right at him, and he took sight, he was ready to kill it, and he missed. And then he shot again, and he missed, and he shot again, and he missed. And you could tell the anger in his voice as he's saying this story about what just happened with this wolf. For some reason, it did not occur to me something was wrong with the gun. This made me feel like the wolf had some supernatural presence to it.
Yeah. All he says, I like the famous line, it just stood there staring at me, not even flinching at every shot, and then it got up and walked away. Wild animals don't just act like that, and I just don't miss like that.
That line was cool. That was, like, eerie.
Ollie's just one of the coolest characters in the franchise. Not really my favorite, but like coolest. He's like Tino Balducci levels of cool, except he's not an idiot to go along with it. But he kind of reminds me of Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. He's just like this stoic man of the land. He's just a really fun guy to talk to, except when he's not like chewing you out for not calling the Avalanche Patrol after you get buried alive.
That's true. Ollie does raise a ton of tasks for you to do, essential phone calls and whatnot, but all in all, he's a good character. I like his character design, I like his dialogues. He's just a cool guy.
Yeah, he's, I mean, I don't know if he counts as a suspect, but he's probably my favorite character in this game. So,
let's move on to the other guy in the basement.
Yanni Volkstaya.
Okay, it's where in Russia?
He's from Iladset and Fredonia.
That's right, Fredonia. That was the place.
Yeah. Yanni is extravagant. He's probably one of the best twist villains that there's been yet.
I have a lot to say about the ending when we get there.
Oh yeah, this could be one of the best top 3, if not best ending so far in the franchise. It's a
spoiler alert. Yanni is the culprit.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, let's cover Yanni's character first.
Yanni Volkstaya is really cool. I think that he's a great character. He's a great character study of a Nancy Drew suspect. His whole deal is that he is a Russian skier, and unlike the first European Olympian that we've met in the franchise, Jacques Brunet, he has a reputation to uphold, and he is a champion Olympic Russian skier, and he feeds into the funny stereotype that, like, Russian sports are taken very, very, very seriously to the point where, like, borderline mafia stuff is happening behind the scenes, like drugs are being taken and hits are being called on people to smash their kneecaps and stuff. And Yanni says that he comes out here because it's a very remote place where his, quote, competitors cannot find him, so that way they cannot sabotage him. He's convinced that the bombs that have been going off are actually his Olympic competitors literally trying to bomb him while he's practicing skiing.
Yeah, Yanni's incredibly self-absorbed in my opinion. I think his skiing is taken extremely, maybe a little too seriously on his behalf, but
he speaks broken English and he's got a great accent. I think other things that are important to know about him is that he's not a very friendly guy, but he's also not, like, that hostile. When he first meets you, he goes, "Oh no, more guests. Chantal assured me that there would not be anybody else showing up to the lodge."
well, he's certainly not friendly. I mean, he has his moments where he warms up to Nancy, but like,
Yeah, he confides in her about stuff, like
Now-
when he talks about how his grandma was eaten by wolves because a guy pushed her off his moped or something.
I was just gonna say, this game, I'm now realizing this, has just some great dialogues out of all characters. My favorite one, maybe the most notable of the game, is Yanni's story of how a wolf killed his grandmother.
Yeah,
This
we don't
was
even
a-
know if that's true now.
We
that we're thinking
don't know if it's true, but it was kind of just a chilling story he told. It kind of paints the picture of how much he hates this wolf and this issue that's coming up at the lodge here. And I don't know. I think it was a cool little backstory to his character. It's not even a backstory, it's just he's opening up to you at some point.
So yeah, Yanni definitely has his moments where he's just kind of on the level with Nancy, and I think that's really cool. There's one part in the game where you find a hidden compartment with a radio in his room that's like encoded frequencies, and Nancy can just bring it up to his face and he goes, "I use that radio to communicate with my coach. It scrambles the frequencies so that no one can see what we are saying and stuff."
That was like the most bold-faced lie I could ever imagine in a Nancy Drew game.
I'm honestly, no, I would have bought it if I didn't know how the game ended.
Oh,
but-
no, I wouldn't have. Once I saw that, something sketch is going on here.
Well, Yanni overall, I think, is a great character, a very good culprit, and
I like him a lot, too.
okay, so I think that should go ahead and move us into the two goofs and gaffs that play fox and geese all day. This is one of the greatest two-player character dynamics since, like, Frank and Joe Hardy.
We have Lou Talbot and Bill Kessler. Her Interactive finally did something that they should have done back in Danger on Deception Island, which is have two interacting characters at the same time. And it flowed so well in this game. It was great.
That would have been, like, a great thing for them to do with Holt and Jenna, but basically, you can pick which one you want to talk to, Lou or Bill, and as you're going through the dialogue with them, the other character will occasionally interject. It's like talking with Bess and George on the phone. And I've said this in previous reviews. Talking with Bess and George is always fun, because it's talking to two people at the same time. It feels like the conversation keeps on getting carried. And the same thing goes for these two guys, because they're goofs. Lou is like, let me think, he must be 19 years old, and he's like
He's a college student. I'm forgetting the college.
California University of Brea.
That's
and
right.
He's an art major of all things, and Bill keeps on teasing about how Nancy's gonna need like hydrochloric acid and an atomic bomb to clean his room.
Yeah, they keep nagging on each other. Bill always nags on Lou about him being an art student, this stereotypical art student, and then Lou will always go on about how Bill's an old geezer and all this.
Yeah.
They have a really cool dichotomy.
Bill and Lou always have you doing little puzzles for their enjoyment, like, hey, we need you to sweep off this ice skating rink so that I can prove to Lou that I'm gonna like kick him.
That was a fun puzzle.
Yeah.
It's just Minesweeper, but it was fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. We'll get more to that in puzzles. Then there's like the fishing challenge that all he straight up tells you, yo, Bill's getting lonely, so can you please like challenge him to fishing?
That made me feel so bad though, because I was picturing myself through the perspective of Bill. There's literally nobody here, and it's like, it just makes me feel sad, because to hear that somebody at the guest is unhappy and lonely like that, it broke my heart.
But one thing that I think is important to note about Bill that we don't find out till the late game is that Bill was actually raised here, essentially, and that he's been coming to the lodge ever since he was like 5 years old. And you find this out during a scandalous sauna sequence where Nancy gets locked in the sauna. It's like the, 15th time in the franchise someone tried to have her killed. But anyways, yeah, there's these pictures that are left behind with a little boy wearing like a coonskin cap, and they're black and white, and he has the exact same birthmark on his cheek that Bill Kessler has today. And to be fair, the birthmark is kind of hard to see, and you never really notice it when you're looking at Bill, because in conversation you just might think it's the thing. But sure enough, when you ask Bill about it, he fesses up and says, yep, that's me, I lied, this isn't my first summer here, or my first winter here. Yeah, I've been coming here since I was like a wee lad. And so Bill starts to tell you all sorts of stories about Trapper Dan and how to get inside Trapper Dan's needle and stuff. Man, I never realized that, like, Nancy, at the beginning of this game, when she goes to Trapper Dan's Needle and she's exploring, she says, oh, look, this thing must open up. And as soon as you get into Trapper Dan's Needle, at the very end, the game's over. Imagine if she was able to, like, pry it open from the start.
We're in the end game now.
Yep. Well, let's see. About Lou, then, it's important to note that Lou has an interesting plot where apparently he's been caught stealing dinosaur bones in the past.
So, a lot of suspicion is thrown on Lou throughout the entirety of the game because we find out in a little newspaper clipping, Lou's gotten in a lot of trouble with the law before for scavenging dinosaur fossils and other things that he can't rightfully own.
Yeah, he's kind of like Emily Griffin dragging the lake bed for artifacts and stuff when it comes to that. But
So-
he claims he's doing it in the name of art, not money.
The idea is that Lou is up here for the purpose of scavenging for these dinosaur bones up in Alberta, Canada.
And he's been using explosives to unearth them, because in multiple craters that we found so far, there have been little fossilized remains left inside them.
And I totally like this idea. It throws a fair amount of suspicion onto Lou. It's a very plausible outcome for the game, but obviously it didn't take that route. Except it sort of did.
Oh yeah, in ways. Man, Lou was almost equally as guilty as Yanni, but he just wasn't the one blowing the place up.
I know. Well, Lou's not an innocent guy, and I really liked that. But so cool backstory, cool bit of shade thrown there on Lou. And then I think we should dive into the last suspect of the game. And in my opinion, a lot more could have been done for Guadalupe.
I feel like maybe they gave her half the games of time to actually be a character, because
No, Jamie, I was paying attention. When we played the game, we got one singular conversation with her. We get one quality conversation with her, and then she leaves.
But it's cool how she leaves, though, because what happens is, it turns out that Lupe, because she asks you some suspicious questions the one time you meet her. She says, like, have you by any chance seen the wolf? And she's like, pretending, oh, I'm a bird watcher. Tell me more about the wolf, Nancy.
So her whole idea is she's an animal rights activist here to kind of make sure the wolf is being treated okay. And she is very opposed to Ollie and his hunting way of life and all this stuff. The two bash heads from time to time.
Yeah, she's with the, as Ollie says at one point in the game, that wacko liberal... What does he say?
Wait, I think he's a
psycho liberal wacko run and grow free activist vegan group or something.
Did he say liberal or left wing?
I think left wing. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, Ollie takes a funny shot at the political party there. But
yeah. He
the first mention of that ever in a Nancy Drew game. This was a semi-mature game.
Yeah. You know what? This is something I wanted to save to the end of Suspects to say, but I can easily compliment this as being the most realist Nancy Drew game. It deals with a lot of real-world issues. There's cool stuff like the whole dilemma and qualms of if it's a moral thing to be able to hunt wolves all year round just because they can be pests in some situations. And there's like just little mentions and phone contacts about stuff like Disneyland and eBay that you just don't hear about in other games, and it just makes it feel more like real life.
Very fair point.
So
touching more on Lupe.
Yeah, Lupe is the one that messed up the iron sights on Ollie's rifle, and so Ollie just loses his, he loses it. And he throws her out personally. And later on, Nancy receives a letter from Lupe with her number and says, please call me, I need your help answering some stuff. And Lupe fesses up, says like, yeah, I'm with that wacko left-wing psycho group and stuff. And she basically says, I need you to keep on telling me about this wolf and what you find out about it, because we're trying to get a sanctuary to agree to take it if we can just safely capture it.
Now look, my issue with Lupe is that I like the part that she's thrown out early, and that's a cool storyline. I like the fusion there between her and Ollie. But what I do not like is, why does she come in halfway through the game? She should be there right from the get-go.
Yeah, I guess she should, but it's also kind of suspicious that she just kind of shows up after you've seen the wolf.
I remember the first time actually playing White Wolf, Jamie. She just happened to spawn there at like the 40-50% mark of the game, and I was like, excuse me?
Who is this?
Who is this? And I was like, where have you been?
Of the entire franchise, she's probably the one suspect that gets the least amount of screen time. Before we wrap up Suspects, I think it's important to note that this game has a ton of phone contacts, and I think that...
That's true.
Now, parts of that is forgivable because... Actually, no, it's not. You see, I was never able to beat this game because I never realized that it was absolutely essential to the progression of the plot that you have to call every single guest that had once stayed at the lodge. And you get most of their numbers by going on the, task manager thing on the computer that, shows everyone who stayed at the lodge, and it has their phone numbers listed, and Nancy has to pull them up in her observations thing, and then sometimes there's crumpled up letters between, Elsa Sibelhoth and her crush or something. and that one of them has a phone number in it. Basically, you have to make like 6 or 7 phone calls at one point of the game, and if you don't make them or you miss one or think you made one and you got voicemail, then the game halts until you call them all. And I'm sure that if you watch the playthrough, you realize that we made a lot of edits of us just walking around and throwing salmon in the trash can during dinner because we didn't realize we needed to like call Elsa Sybilhoth because we went to voicemail the first time. But otherwise,
that's the game's fault. It does a poor job of explaining, unless you really like stalk the task list. Really,
all I should say stuff like, "Have you checked in with all the guests yet, Nancy?" Because make sure you do that. You can find their numbers on the computer upstairs or something.
That's the pointer that the game needed. The game has no indication that you need to use the computer. You need to go to files, find the previous tenants' phone numbers and all this stuff. There's just a lack of explanation there.
Otherwise, Bess and George, actually maybe it's just Ned in this game, I'm not sure, but Tino Balducci, just forget Ned, we have Tino freaking Balducci. In his first line of dialogue, he goes, "Hey Nancy, remember it's me, Tino Balducci from that last train to Blue Moon Canyon?" And they capitalize it too, because they're just like, "Yep, we just did that."
Well, Tino's so great because he doesn't change at all. He still is absolutely terrible at mystery solving, hence one of the more tedious puzzles in this game.
Nancy calls him out at one point and says that, like, "You know, I'm surprised you're actually still on the force after the questionable and unethical stunts you pulled on that train."
He clearly has no idea what's going on. It would have been better if Tino was at the lodge. That would have
been crazy. I mean, they still would have had his character model left over from just like 3 games ago, so they could have done it.
I know, it would have been much better if Tino was at the lodge. Imagine
where would they put him? What if he was like sitting by the fire?
Yeah,
occasionally swap like tags in to play Fox and Geese.
No, yeah. Can you imagine if right from the get-go it was you and Tino take on the mystery? You and Tino like go out to the fishing lodge and all this stuff to explore.
Okay, that's actually awesome. I hope that they bring him back in the new engine and Midnight in Salem engine, so that you can like have him standing around with you just swaying back and forth instead of Deirdre Shannon.
That would have added so much to the game. I would have loved it.
I wonder if his hair's graying by now in the franchise in like game 34.
Still probably has blue hair dye.
Yeah, his hair always was blue.
Alright, well I think we've wrapped up Suspects well for the most part.
Suspects is the meat of this game because there's a lot of phone contacts. You got like 5 or 6 people. Oh, we should mention Freddy. Freddy you never really meet directly, but she is Ollie's little girl. She's like 9 or 10, and she lives in a great big snow castle that she made on the way to Icicle Lake. Or I think it's Icicle Lake. It's something like that.
Yeah,
anyhow, every time you pass her, she makes you snowball fight with her, which I gotta add, if you're playing this game for the Wii, which we had for a while, this is impossible.
It's absolutely impossible on the Wii.
You have to like aim and then throw the snowball in a 2.5 second time frame, and it's like first one to 10 wins, and eventually she gives you toasty packs so you don't freaking freeze to death every time you leave the lodge, so that's kind of cool, but man, I've noticed that this game's making me want to swear a lot in the review. I think that's the cook and me talking when it comes to those puzzles.
Anyways, a nice character. She's underused a little bit, but still nonetheless, it's cool to have her around for snowball fights.
She kind of sounds like Eric Cartman from South Park.
Yeah, she does sound like a South Park character for sure.
Yeah, Dad said that when we were playing this. Anyhow, I think it's time we move into puzzles. Now, there were maybe 3 puzzles in this game that were quite insufferable. They weren't like hard, just poorly explained. And then the rest of them were actually pretty good, I think.
There's some great puzzles in this game, and then, yeah, there's some bad ones.
4 puzzles. I just remembered the Fox and Geese part. We literally had to look up, like, a speedrunner's guide as how to do the Fox and Geese.
Yeah, Fox and Geese is terrible. But I want to start off with, let's start off with the good things about this game. The 2 puzzles that I loved were the puzzle built into the wall to access the secret passageway in the isolated little lodge.
Oh, yeah, Julius McQuaid's lodge. Yeah, so we said we bring this guy up again. This is not Trapper Dan. It's weird that they introduced him halfway through, a second frontierman, or who was just living out in the wilderness. So this guy had a little cabin by the mountain, and this is where you first meet the wolf, who is named Isis. So yeah, Julius McQuaid has like a journal that talks all about how Isis saved him at one point when he was left out in the snow or something and brought him a jacket, which Isis does for Nancy at one point, which is a really cool puzzle sequence. But anyways, yeah, there's a little secret passageway in the wall that you have to open up with a dinosaur bone that Lou Talbot stole because he's a stupid college kid who thinks that he can just has God's permission to steal dinosaur bones. I don't know.
But there's this cool little puzzle. It's actually extremely difficult. We had to cut 20-30 minutes of us trying to solve this puzzle. I would say it's like a hard logic-based puzzle.
Julius called it? It's the Infernal slot machine.
Yeah, well, the objective is to match 3 slots in the exact same order. There's 3 different animals. You need.
And you start off with a duck coin. And there are 9 coins. And there's 3 of each, and it's like a wolf and an owl and a rabbit or something.
Right.
And you have to push the duck coin in the top, and the coin on the bottom comes out. And I don't know, it's so hard to explain. Maybe we'll try to match up footage of the actual thing from here so you can get a better idea. But if you've played this game before, you know what we're talking about.
Maybe there is some extremely easy cheat to it, do it in 5 moves or whatever, but this took a long time.
This is one of the better puzzles. This is like the best kind of puzzle in the franchise, really, because the instructions are very, very clear, and the objective is very, very difficult. That's how you do a puzzle. You gotta make sure there's absolutely no... Everyone has to be super certain about what you have to do, and it's just about a matter of doing it. That's
true. Those are 2 great components to a puzzle, and this one was another really unique puzzle, never before seen in a Nancy Drew game, and I really liked... I just love the idea of it, and it's also very rewarding that it's access to the first secret passageway. I think that was really neat.
It brings you into this creepy mine that's like lit by uranium glowing rocks that Nancy should not be near because she probably has like multiple kinds of cancer now.
Yeah, honestly, that was a little bit of a plot hole.
If the glowing... Yeah, you even get a Geiger counter at one point, and sure as heck, they're like radioactive.
Well, there's also like a super radioactive spot in the lodge.
Yes, that's true. There's one part in the game where you find out that he's been hiding like this glowing radioactive wolf key in the steps to the cellar. Like, you better like cover that up and tell Chantal to get insurance and like a good lawyer, because rest assured, 20 years, people are going to trace back their skin cancer and figure out that this lodge gave it to them.
The patrons are going to have a really good case against Chantal in a couple of years, but...
Yeah, get the place scrubbed.
Back on the puzzles, the other one I wanted to touch on, it's right from the get-go, actually. It's just a clever little Minesweeper puzzle, and it's always one that I look forward to. It's not original by any means. Well, I guess it is in the sense that it's the first Minesweeper Nancy Drew.
But Minesweeper's just been a staple of, like, Windows default games on computers since, like, the late 90s.
Yeah, this one was just fun, though. It's to clear the ice rink so that Lou and Bill can go and race. Yeah, they were going to race on the ice rink, and it was just a really clever puzzle that can actually be extremely difficult on senior mode.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to bring up with senior mode is that there's different configurations, like 2 or 3 different configurations per difficulty level of where the cracks in the ice are. I don't know how rare it is because I've never really played on Senior, but on Senior Detective Mode, one of the configurations with 26 cones is literally just a bunch of cracks across the middle that spell out the letters cry. That just must be the biggest middle finger to the fans.
I can't imagine being a speedrunner and then getting that configuration. You essentially have to restart.
I can't imagine being a speedrunner and having to do Fox and Geese and cooking 24/7. So,
yeah.
Okay, I want to go off now about the puzzles that break this game. There's mandatory stuff you have to do every day. Like I said, the maid service is forgivable in concept and in practice. All you have to do is go to people's rooms, make their beds, take their clothes and stuff, and throw it down the laundry chute. You don't have to do that once a day. Cooking, on the other hand, is very annoying. On the Wii, it was kind of fun because it was a totally different setup, and you would, like, swing the Wii remote to tenderize this meat and stuff. On this, it's just taking people's orders, burning omelets, and just throwing out dozens and dozens and dozens of dollars of salmon fillets to make Chantal angry.
Dude, I have no idea why her interactive continuously reuses cooking puzzles. They're never fun.
I mean, there's probably some people that like them. I know Sylvia once talked about how she thought that some cooking puzzles were good.
Well, this game certainly abuses that.
Okay, yeah. This game, like, I'll give them if for a cooking puzzle, it's good. But a cooking puzzle you have to do 3 times a day, and upwards of, like, 9 times throughout the game. It's not good.
Let's talk about more puzzles. I know you liked the one with Ice's commands and everything, right?
Yeah, those are okay.
That's kind of like a staple point to the game.
Yeah. So the game gets like a new thing on the HUD that like helps you give commands to Isis, and you basically tell stuff like, go left, forward, right, forward, jump, paw, go. And then Isis will crawl into this little tunnel in the radioactive mine shaft and do your instructions to help retrieve your coins and stuff for you. Man, the end of this game gets a bit confusing and very difficult in the puzzles. Oh, and another thing that was really clever, but kind of like stupid at the same time, was the railroad code that was in a, that was in Julius McQuaid's journal. Oh. That took us like 30 minutes of me like trying to read sideways, and my dad transcribing every letter that I read off onto a piece of paper. It was really, really difficult. It's a really simple code, but God, it gives you a migraine reading it. And it's like 2 or 3 pages full of it. Basically, it's just top to bottom, left to right, letter by letter. So, like, going up and down, it's L-E-T-S-P-L-A-Y. And then it's just like L-T-P-A. And then the bottom is just stuff, and you can't tell it says Let's Play or something. It's so weird.
Yeah,
But-
it's a really difficult code to read.
And the task list, like, never checks itself off for that puzzle, because there's nowhere that you actually write it down in the game. The game expects you to just be able to turn your head and read it, or write it down yourself on pen and paper.
Yeah, that was another little lack of explanation. Or at least it would have been nice if Nancy could have, like, had a cheap line of dialogue, like, explaining what the code meant. That would have been so helpful, but no.
Now, one last puzzle that I think deserves a lot of attention, and I can't decide if I love it or hate it, is Tino's Pseudoscience Criminology Survey.
It has its place in the game. It adds to Tino's character.
Yeah, it makes Tino even more of a stupid, fake cop idiot. So, Tino sends you this survey through the fax machine, where you're supposed to get 4 pieces of information from every culprit, which he then puts through like a crime-solving algorithm to find out who's done what. You need to ask every character which planet they most associate with, what hometown they were born in, and, like, what side of the bed they get up on in the morning, and whether or not they hate paprika. Now, some parts of this were clever, because, like, when you go into people's bedrooms and stuff, you have to, you have to, like, check the sides of their beds to see which side they got up on.
Yeah, you can check where their slippers are. That's kind of an indicator.
And whenever you cook a meal, you can put paprika on everyone's stuff, and then Ollie will be like, oh, and don't go putting paprika in Lou Talbot's food anymore. He hates paprika. And, oh my god.
It's just like, you read this little grid of everything that's supposed to indicate criminal behavior, and it just looks like something some crackpot would do. It's so irrelevant to people's, like, crime motives. It's just such a tedious puzzle, but it's funny, and it has its place because it's Tino Balducci.
And a trend sometimes you see in the series is that whenever a puzzle requires you to manually type out answers, it is a very big gray area, and, like, if it's case sensitive, if you have to specify planet X when Lou says that he wants his planet he's associated to be with a planet that doesn't even exist. Like,
yeah.
Some parts would get annoying. Tino keeps on saying ridiculous stuff, and he goes, well, Nancy, judging by this survey, it looks like the worst crime anyone here could have committed is that they jaywalk every now and again, or they regularly break into pet stores, so you're gonna have to run it again. And in the end, Tino says that it looks like our culprit is a champion snowshoeing Olympic wolf hunter, bird run and grow free watching activist who plays fox and geese all day. Nancy's just like, you literally just described everyone at the lodge.
Yeah, Tino's I mean, it would have been better if Tino was in the game personally and there was some other puzzle.
In all fairness, I think it's kind of cool that Tino eventually, like, pieces it together, and he mails you the newspaper clipping about how Lou Talbot has a history of stealing dinosaur fossils and stuff. That comes directly from Tino, but, you know, as you solve that puzzle, it's just annoying. Like, dude, are you serious? I, like, poured paprika on everyone's food for 3 meals for this.
Yeah, it was tedious.
Yeah, and the game halts until you beat it too. So,
puzzles in this game, they're extremely mediocre. Some are great, some are bad.
In
general,
mix.
there's a lot that lack explanation, and I think that's kind of an annoying. And if we're gonna lump doing maid service and cooking under puzzles too, then I mean this game is on the lower tier of puzzles.
Definitely, it's like every third puzzle is horrible, but like there's good puzzles too. But the question is, do they make up for the bad ones?
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to music now. Music, I think it was really good in this game.
Okay, yeah, so the other snowy game that comes to mind first is Treasure in the Royal Tower. But Treasure in the Royal Tower's whole game was, it focused on having a warm soundtrack, and it made the whole soundtrack sound like you were by a fireplace. This game makes the whole soundtrack sound cold. It's all like...
It's scary.
Triangles, icicles, and like whistling winds and stuff like that. It's got a really, really well-established atmospheric soundtrack.
Yeah, my favorite track in the game is Snowshoes. It plays a lot when you're outside. And I like it because it's kind of hard to explain. It's like a very slow-paced, very odd instrumental music track. And
this music relies a ton on flute and like other woodwind, and then a company with just like
Triangles and
xylophone and
such.
triangles and stuff.
And for some reason, this is a little bit of an unsettling track, and I think that's exactly what they were going for, because the game has a very strict isolation feel. It kind of takes from The Shining, honestly. Yeah. It's like the isolated, snowy lodge, but when you're all alone outside, no one really around, you know there's a wolf on the midst and everything, this specific track, I'm going to play right here, it just makes you feel uneasy.
Every now and again, you'll hear an explosion in the distance, or like all these guns go off, and you're just like, oh crap, did he just kill the wolf, or did he miss again, or did he just shoot Lupe? What happened? but yeah. On that note,
what's your favorite track?
Okay, there's a track, I'm not sure the title of it, that plays whenever you're just traipsing around the lodge most of the time. Yeah, we just got it. Crackle is the track title I'm thinking of. Here's a little sample of it. One thing that I think is remarkable is that a lot of the music in this game sounds very, very similar, to the part where you can't tell some tracks apart sometimes. And in most mediums, I would say that that's kind of bad, because it's just kind of like your music all sounds the same. But when you're trying to make a blend of an atmosphere, it just kind of becomes the natural sound of this game, which I think is really impressive. But there's one track in particular that plays a lot when you're inside that has like a really cool flute on it.
And then it's also worth mentioning another great track title that plays the outdoors really well, fits the outdoor theme, is Icicle. We'll play that here.
And you know, one track that almost never plays in this game, but I feel like deserves a lot of attention, is definitely the Olympian Track, which is probably put in the game for Yanni. And it's a very, very different feel from the rest of the tracks in the game. It has like a big brass vibe. Have you ever heard this?
No.
Yeah. It's a very rare track that plays in the game with brass, and it's got like a background opera singing in the back of it or something, and it really feels like a grand Olympic track. It feels like Yanni's anthem of like training for success and victory. It makes me sad that he's the culprit, because he was a really cool character. I liked him.
Well, he's got a great backstory and the ending and everything.
Oh yeah, he does have a pretty riveting story, but we'll get to that soon.
All in all, the music is very well fitting for the snowy, isolated environment that is Icicle Creek Lodge.
So I think that brings us to atmosphere, where we're also going to be talking about a lot of the cool scripted events that happen during the game, like Nancy getting buried in an avalanche in the first fourth of the game, and then the wolf rescues her and then leaves her be. Right after you sweep off the pond for the Minesweeper thing, Nancy turns around and goes, oh my god, those are wolf tracks, maybe I should follow them. And then the game takes over and Nancy starts doing her cinematic, snowy, crunchy footstep walking stuff. And so Nancy comes to Trapper Dan's needle, stops at that, takes notice of how there's fabric hanging out of it and it must open up somehow, and then she keeps on following the wolf tracks. And eventually she gets to Chicken Ridge, which is just a giant mountain covered in snow. And then she hears an explosion in the distance, and she goes, that sounds like an explosion. Yeah, no kidding, Nancy. but then an avalanche starts. It's really just like a super scary moment, because you feel like you messed up somehow.
Nancy absolutely should have died, just putting that out there.
Yeah, Nancy gets covered in snow, and she's running out of air, and she's just trapped in the dark little cavern she's in. and she hears, "Hey, someone's up there! Help! Can you hear me? I'm down here!" And then the snow above her gets torn away, and just like, "Oh, who's gonna save us? Is it Yanni? Is it Lou?" The wolf pokes its head down, just snarling at you and growling. Like this, there was probably a scarier moment than the ghost dogs attacking the house and Ghost Dogs Moon. We should talk more about the locations and atmosphere. So the lodge itself does an excellent job of feeling super warm.
Yeah, definitely. It's just so different. The color scheme, it's a lot of like browns and maroons and such, and it's supposed to be like a very different feel from the blanketed blue, white, snowy atmosphere outside. Entering the lodge is just a breath of fresh air, honestly, because it's so warm. It feels super cozy. It's a place that I would want to go to on a nice vacation. The lodge itself, it's a decent size. The main lobby area is pretty cool. I mean, then there's the fireplace where Lou and Bill are always playing fox and geese. I don't know, it's nice. Upstairs doesn't offer that much. I like the rooms. It's like, I just keep thinking from the perspective of, if I was on a vacation, would I enjoy my time here? The answer is very obviously yes. The basement area is cool too, though it's really cluttered, not much to do down there. I don't know, the lodge is just supposed to be a very quaint feeling warm place, I think.
Yeah, one thing that I really like about the lodge is that whereas in other games, like at Shadow of the Water's Edge, the Ryokan you're staying at, they're usually having like business booming and the place is checked out. But in that game, there's only like 3 people there because they're doing poor business. In this game, they're doing decent business, and they have 6 people there, and everyone knows each other and gossips about each other. And one of the things that I just loved is that they all sit down for lunch together, and see like, she cooks their meals, and you can see who wants what to eat. I love how Lupe asked for eggs on her salad. That's a real nice animal rights activism moment there. I don't know if that was an oversight. They didn't realize that her character should probably be a vegan or something and not have eggs on her salad, let alone anchovies. I think she calls for anchovies on it too. But yeah, that was just kind of funny. I really wish that if this is a game they remastered or something, which they probably won't because they already released it for the Wii for one thing, if they could like have it so you have the characters talking with each other in the background, like how they do in Mornings at Waverly when you make snacks at the snack bar.
Imagine if there was like a Shadow Ranch type gathering, gather around for dinner. Everyone's like, you got Bill and Lou just ragging on each other. Guadalupe has her tensions with Ollie. That would have been super cool.
That would have been awesome, just to see how the characters act with each other when cameras are off, you know. Anyhow, let's see. So
the mines is a very different break in atmosphere in this game. I think it was cool.
The mines were like, we had never gotten into the mines until this playthrough. It's just super creepy. It's like railroad track, mine shaft tunnels with green lights and everything. Yeah, the mines were a very complicated place. And in the end, you end up getting into Trapper Dan's Needle, and that's where the end game stuff begins to happen. And the ending of this game was just crazy, but I don't want to get into it just yet. In terms of atmosphere, though, outdoors is probably where the majority of the game happens. There's not very much in the lodge besides the different rooms you go through, but those are kind of boring. There's locked cabinets in them, and you can't even get into most of them. You can pretty much only get into Lou's. What else? There's the whole sequence where you have to catch a 2-foot northern pike in a fishing competition with Bill.
And that leads to a creepy cutscene that, even though I was expecting it to happen, still caught me off guard.
Yeah, as soon as you exit the fishing shack with your 2-foot northern pike, some black silhouetted figure just hucks an ice ball right at Nancy's head, and she just gets knocked out. It's a total jump scare.
And then there's an explosion.
Yeah, then there's an explosion, and the entire lake gets shattered, and Nancy's just adrift on an ice floe.
This is definitely one of the most serious attempts at Nancy's life, I think. This is where the stakes really ramped up, because whoever this culprit is really does not have any regards for Nancy's life.
There's little bits and pieces of the game that recur, like how Ollie has Nancy take his snowmobile out to Skookum Ridge to see if there's been an avalanche, and then he calls the avalanche patrol and stuff like that. Can you give a favorite location in this game?
I gotta say it's the lodge.
Especially like the Fox and Geese room, because that might be what I say too.
Yeah, it's just warm and cozy. It's a cool place.
I'd also say the lodge, and second, I guess I'd say maybe the fishing shack, because I just like fishing. I've always wanted to go ice fishing, and it's just a really cozy place. I like how they made it so you replenish your health and heat when you're in there. That was cool. But overall, yeah. Oh, and we didn't even mention the Sauna Puzzle, where that thing gives you like 60 seconds to solve a pretty complicated pipe puzzle. That was super intense. We died like a million times on that.
Yeah, the timer on that puzzle absolutely needs to be adjusted. I mean, I solved it first try, not to flex. It took Jamie like 10 times.
Yes,
before
it did.
To me.
Now, I want to be clear.
You need every single move you do to be perfect, pretty much. If you screw up once, I mean, you gotta restart. You gotta second chance it.
I like how 5 times in the game, pretty much, you come back into the lodge and there's a note taped for Nancy on the bench, and the most sinister one is just, Nancy, I have something very interesting that you'd like to see. Come meet me in the sauna. And it's just anonymous. Nancy gets in there, and that's where she finds the pictures of young Bill Kessler, who, by the way, has no relation to Rolf Kessler. You can even ask him about that, and he just goes, no idea.
It was a cool touch.
Yeah. I always appreciate callbacks to the previous games, even if I didn't like Haunted Carousel that much. But, yeah, Nancy gets in there, picks up the thing, and then the door gets stuck behind her, and the room starts filling with steam, and Nancy has to hurry before she passes out. And that's actually something that happened to some of the previous people at the sauna, where apparently the steam makes the door get stuck sometimes, and, like, other people almost passed out. It was, like, a couple on their honeymoon or something.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
In the end game, Yanni is very adamant about saying that was a total mistake. He didn't mean to put her life in danger there, but that's up to interpretation.
I feel like Yanni's a nice guy. Actually, no, he tried to blow up Nancy.
He tried to kill us.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay, let's get into the end game now with a very great culprit reveal.
Okay, yeah, so it's important to note that like 75% of the way through the game, Nancy confronts Lou about, hey, you've been stealing dinosaur bones, and I kind of need the T-Rex bone that was here. Give it to me. And Lou just gets all fussy with Nancy and hands over the key, and then he up and leaves. And it's just kind of sad because Lou's all sour with Nancy. And I feel like the reason that they did this is because when Nancy gets into Trapper Dan's Needle, there is a backpack that's Lou's backpack, University of Brea, and it is full of Semtex.
Oh yeah, it's really creepy.
There was a puzzle that's very important we forgot to touch on because it comes back in the end game, and it's so clever, where Isis has been taught to identify people's scents to an object by getting a scent to somebody's and then like putting down that item next to the cloth that belongs to them, or the item that belongs to them. And you do this by taking used towels from everyone's hotel room to figure out who's the journal that we found that was out in the snow about like new finds with dinosaur fossils and stuff. And spoiler alert, it's Lou Talbot's, and that's how we confront him. But yeah, it's crazy because this comes back in the end. Go ahead and talk about what happens as soon as you get the door open and Nancy starts walking on her own.
So Nancy finds Lou's college backpack filled with Semtex. It's really frightening. It's just like a really crazy discovery. And then I need to paint my own personal picture. All I knew going into this game, I had never played it much, but I was aware that Yanni was the culprit. So we get this culprit reveal where Yanni comes down. He acts super genuine. He seems super, like, scared, on edge. He's like, what is going on? And, you explain to him about Lou's backpack here. It's filled with explosives. At this point, Yanni does not come off as a culprit at all. What is super compelling is that Yanni mentions we need to get the authorities, a bold part on the culprit to suggest that. But then even more so, he offers to stay with the explosives while Nancy does so, which would essentially kill him. See, this was kind of like a cool mind psychological game Yanni pulled here, is because he wanted Nancy to say no to that. And that was really clever. It completely averted my suspicion onto Yanni when he said that. I was like, oh my gosh, do I have this entirely wrong? Is Lou actually the culprit here?
That's like the only game that probably does that. But
it was so clever.
Yeah. And now, what I think is even more clever is that Yanni runs out and he drops some sort of, like, detonator device, and Nancy picks it up and needs a second to figure out what it is, and that's when it starts to become clear that something ain't right here. And then Isis comes in and like drops a black glove from the ski mask right next to the detonator or something, signifying that the scent on that matches the thing Yanni just dropped, meaning that Yanni's had Lou's backpack this whole time. And so then the detonator starts counting down from 30 seconds, and Nancy realizes, oh my god, this guy's trying to see for me.
Super clever reveal. Probably the best culprit reveal in a Nancy Drew game thus far. I'd say so. This was not a direct, oh, Yanni did it. This was there's a third party involved. We get the wolf that inadvertently reveals Yanni's plan.
Yeah, that was clever. That was like not even cheesy. That was Isis coming in clutch, saving Nancy.
Yeah, so it was super well done.
Nancy runs out the top of Trapper Dan's Needle. As the explosion happens, she gets launched in the air. Ollie comes out of nowhere, and he just goes, "What in blazes just happened here?" And he goes, "Ollie, I can't explain, I need your snowmobile, Yanni's the mad bomber!" Something like that. And then you have this really intense snowmobile chase with Yanni.
It's excruciatingly long.
I don't know where he's going, though, because, like...
It feels like you're going for miles on miles, but it ends with Yanni going rogue. He goes off a hill, falls off of his...
It's kind of abrupt. Just the music stops out of nowhere, and Yanni just gets flung off his snowmobile and just lands unconscious and, like, breaks his back or something in the snow. And then you find out in the endgame letter what his whole plan was, and it's pretty sinister.
Oh, it was super unique. It was a completely different route than I was expecting the game to take.
Yeah, so Yanni is a Fredonian spy who was scouting out the lodge because he knew that there were deposits of uranium there, which he was trying to find ways that he could get people off the ranch into clothes so the Fredonian government could send agents out there to extract the uranium and bring it back to them, presumably to make nuclear weapons.
That was a really deep and believable character analysis, just a wrap-up on Yanni's behalf.
But the thing is, Yanni claims that he didn't know what they were going to use it for, and that he was just kind of a pawn in the whole operation.
See, now, he can play that innocence card, but at the end of the day, he still literally tried to bomb us.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I guess, but... Man, I liked Yanni, even if mainly everything he said was just him lying to try to get us on his side. But I think that he was a great culprit and a great character before you even knew that.
Oh, I will never argue that. Yeah, the culprit reveal, Yanni's character, everything in general, it was really well done.
Oh, and they definitely broke the trend in this game of the friendliest character being the culprit. Imagine if Bill Kessler tried to bomb Nancy.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Yeah.
And then other conclusions, the lodge, after all this crazy news stories get published about a Fredonian spy staying there, it's booming in business. Chantel's doing really well. It's always booked up, and
no such thing as bad press.
Yeah, pretty much. But other than that,
I think that the wolf gets taken to the sanctuary after all, so Isis has a happy ending, so that's good for her.
Yeah, she's escorted out of Alberta.
Otherwise, it is a pretty neat conclusion to the game.
Great ending, yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Let's move on to ranking it now.
Let's go ahead and just break down how the scale works again. We don't like to give numbers out of 10 for Nancy Drew game rankings because some Nancy Drew games are better on paper than they are in practice and vice versa. So on that note, we like to rank it with just tiers. We go from A to F, A being good, F being terrible, and then S is the supreme tier reserved for the best of the best. We've only handed out a couple of S's so far. I hand them out more liberally. Julian's a bit more conservative with them. And so on that note, who wants to go first? You want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. All in all, this game has some great ups and some not so great lows. And it's kind of a tough game to rate because at some points, just having to cook multiple times each day outshine like the great things that happen in this game. And there's some great storytelling in this game. There's some really good suspects, a lot of backstory, and a lot of suspects opening up in this game. I don't know, all in all, taking everything into account, I'd say this is a B tier game. It's not a bad game by any means, but it has very notable flaws that would hinder it in any way from being a great game.
Now, I want to say that this is not a good game for a new player to play. Apart from that, I think that this game's kind of interesting because it has like really high highs and really low lows. You'll have like some great characters development, great dialogue, great subplots and twists and stuff like that, and then horrible gameplay mechanics and puzzles, stupid excuses to make Nancy do cooking puzzles all the time. The relief comes way too late at like the 75% mark in the game where Ollie says that he'll do the cooking from now on. You're never exempt from your maid duties really, even when there are just like 2 people you need to clean up for after the lodge. But overall, I think the mystery in this game is really compelling. And the music and atmosphere is too, but the puzzles just drag it down so much.
Yeah, that goes off of there's some great highs and some really low lows. It's just one of those games.
If you're a fan of the franchise, I definitely recommend it. I think it deserves a B. I would not recommend it for a new player, though.
Alright, well there you have it, folks. That's our review for the White Wolf of Icicle Creek. As for every review, we would love to hear your comments down below. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? What did you like? What did you not like? We love these games all around the board. Hearing everyone's opinions, it just adds a lot to the conversation.
Oh, and considering that we're a small channel at the moment that we're uploading this, I can like personally guarantee that if you comment, we will respond.
Our subscriber interaction is one of the favorite things about this channel.
And I just want to tack on real quick at the last second that we just hit 30 subscribers yesterday, and that's a pretty big milestone for us, even though it is just 30 subscribers, because We're honestly so proud of this little community that we've been building. And I've been remembering the names of people I see in the comments. I see Katya, I see Lauren M, and just, M. Fuller was the guy who came in the other day. Chromie, always love your little insights. Sylvia, it's been a pleasure working with you. And
don't forget Tim.
Oh yes, gotta love Tim and Silixer. All those guys who work tirelessly to comment 30 times on a video. Nice content, keep it up. Cool content. Hey, can we be YouTube friends? Give me your SSN, please. But yeah, we've been having a great time filling our quarantine time with this channel, and we hope to keep on going, and we're coming to think about what we're going to be doing once we're done with the reviews and how else we can spend our time on this channel. So otherwise, stay tuned for the other reviews of games coming.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more reviews and gameplays.
Vote for Holt, everybody.
Vote for Holt.
And real quick, we just wanted to mention that we were planning on doing Kapu Cave with Sylvia if we can, just because we hold some different opinions on that game, which I think would be fun to have one person in each corner again. So that is why White Wolf is coming out before Kapu Cave. Rest assured, you're not having another old clock on your hands. We will get the Kapu Cave review out very soon.